Eiyuden Chronicles Rising is the newest RPG that's become available onto the Nintendo Switch by the developers who basically made the original Suikoden game. If you've been paying attention to the saga of this release, you basically know that there was a Kickstarter project from the original Suikoden creators to make the upcoming Eiyuden Chronicles 100 Heroes release, which is pretty much going to take the Suikoden moniker and build up upon it. But before that, they decided to release this kind of side-scrolling platformer town builder RPG called Eiyuden Chronicles Rising, which is now available onto the Nintendo Switch and other consoles like PlayStation, Xbox, and PC. And in this video, I want to do a very quick review of this title on the Nintendo Switch and a little bit on the Xbox Series X as well. So that's the gameplay you should be seeing on screen right now. But do bear in mind that pretty much visually the game holds up on the Nintendo Switch, so there's really nothing to be too concerned of when it comes to that. Now in this title, you're going to be playing as CJ, a scavenger who basically arrives to this new town called New Nevea, which clearly has seen better days. But due to the recent discovery of ancient ruins, brand new settlers and explorers from all over the world are trying to come into this place and basically try to get rich. So in order for you to be able to kind of get rich and kind of get on with the story, you basically have to do a whole heck of a lot of town building and in hand pretty much help out the town folk get their town started back up again. Now everything is pretty basic. It's not really going to be all that like difficult to get started. You're gonna basically find like a blacksmith, you're gonna find an inn, you're gonna find shop for potions and stuff like that, and essentially the people in the town have a request. You go out into the field, you grab the materials you're requested to, you come back, you turn them in, and then you basically get a little cutscene that says, hey, you have this facility now available, do you want to purchase some things for it? And basically when it comes to like blacksmithing, weapon upgrades and stuff like that, this is how the majority of that is handled. But one of the problems you're going to see, and this is going to happen very early on, is the fact that the game kind of like pushes this idea that you're constantly are going to have to be doing side quests and side content separate from the main story, although it does seem to present it like it's part of the main story, but at the end of the day it's just continual grinding work to just kind of develop this town. That is one of the biggest pillars that I think people are misunderstanding when it comes to this game. That is not part of the side story, it's just kind of like part of the main story. You do have to develop the town, kind of like other games have done it in the past, but in this one specifically, it's just a little bit too grueling and overbearing at the end of the day. So it feels like it's just asking for too much and not really giving you too much of the story as to why CJ and the other characters that are essentially introduced into the story, why they're there in the first place. And basically what they're there for is try to get rich. So you go into these mining ventures, you try to go find materials, as each one of the characters has kind of like a purpose as to why they are doing it. But a lot of it ends up getting lost in kind of like the town building aspect of the game, where there's just so much side content, so much content that is just forcing you to help out these town folk because you're continually being asked in order to reach a certain part of the story to go back and like help out the town folk, that everything when it comes to the main story and why CJ is a character and why Guru is the way that he is, or why even Isha is originally in charge of the town to begin with, all of that kind of ends up getting lost in the kind of like the noise of the continual grind of the game. Now, it's not all necessarily negative. The combat when it comes to it is pretty easy and standard. You have your basic jump and then you can double jump. Eventually you can unlock that through like updates and upgrades. You can then have like 3 basic attacks, but then you can add a 4th and a 5th. If you rotate from one character to another, which you could only have one out on the field at any given time, although you can combo one character into another, like eventually you unlock those opportunities, you're going to be able to basically have like continual chains of attacks. A ton of options when it comes to combat are going to like unlock the more you progress, but in the beginning it's pretty bare bones: jump, attack, switch one character to another, pretty basic stuff that only develops the more you continually grow up that town and basically upgrade your weapons. You upgrade your weapons, you get more officially like better options when it comes to attack, you better up your defenses when it comes to your armor, and you get way more bonuses and immunities that you simply didn't have access to. Now ultimately at the end of the day, this isn't all that beneficial or even necessary necessary because the game isn't really all that hard. The actual combat of it is not necessarily difficult. There's only a handful of difficulty spikes that I found that maybe they're just tied to bosses, and only because you have to kind of understand the patterns of the attacks. But other than that, there's really no difficulty when it comes to the combat. And ultimately, it just feels kind of like a lot of rinse and repeat whenever you're dealing with trash mobs that really aren't serving that much of a purpose other than fodder from point A to point B. Now, I will say that one of the saving graces is the kind of like transportation. You are going to be able to fast travel from one place to another rather quickly. Although once you eventually get to the end of a dungeon and you kind of like get all the travel points from that specific dungeon, you are still gonna have to like go back into town, turn in whatever it is that you're gonna need, and then you're most likely gonna get another request that sends you right back into that same, you know, dungeon again. So it's gonna be one of those where it just kind of feels like a lot of fetch quest related content, that it feels bloated unnecessarily, so that is a little bit of a downer. But if you don't have a problem with that, you're probably gonna be fine dealing with this game at the end of the day. Now, performance on Xbox is excellent. On the Series X, this game runs buttery smooth. It's not really that much of a problem. On the Nintendo Switch, the visuals are a little bit dialed back. There is a motion blur that's kind of like removed on the Nintendo Switch that is not really all that there. There are some issues when it comes to font text size. The font is a little bit small on the Switch, especially in handheld mode. And I think frame rates do stutter in some places, but I have not been able to pinpoint specifically as to why that would be. There's no real big flashing attacks or anything like that happening. It's just that frame rates are not necessarily all that stable on Switch. But I wouldn't say that is game breaking by any means, because again, the combat is not all that difficult to begin with. Now, at the end of the day, Eiyuden Chronicles Rising is a $15 title, I believe, on the eShop right now. It's not necessarily going to be one of those things that's going to break the budget, and ultimately is about a 15 to 20 hour experience that is supposed to be an introductory title. Do keep that in mind for the upcoming Eiyuden Chronicles 100 Heroes release, which is still not yet confirmed for the Nintendo Switch, but it will be launching, I believe, next year for other consoles, and the developers have said that a Switch version is something that they are trying to consider, see if they could get it to work there. So since that's going to be more of a Suikoden traditional experience, presumably, we still don't necessarily know much about it, this is a little bit of an introductory game that is going to get you to see a lot of those characters, a lot of those host characters that are going to be appearing in that game are introduced in this title. There's a lot of referencing material here that you're all going to notice as you kind of like pick off little parts of the conversation, that which, by the way, none of them are voiced. Everything is just, you're just reading the text. There's nothing voiced here whatsoever. But again, it kind of feels budgety as it is, so you know, it's something worth to consider. Nintendo Sphere gives Eiyuden Chronicles Rising onto the Nintendo Switch a 6.5 out of 10. If you're brand new to my channel, be sure to leave a like and subscribe, hit the bell to receive notifications when the videos go up, and as always, thank you so much for watching. See ya!